Welcome back to Frontend Hire. Today we're going to solve a JS coding question. It's going to be a polyfill one, and it's going to be the Array.at method, right? We're going to write a polyfill for that. Array.at method is pretty new, and though it's supported in most of the browsers, some of the older browsers will need polyfill, and it's quite simple to implement. The only reason this question is medium level difficulty is because it's a polyfill. Like, I personally hate asking polyfills in an interview, but polyfills do test a lot of problem solving, and we'll see that in this solution too, right? So what is the objective? Implement a polyfill for the Array.at method. The method should work for both positive and negative integers. It should return undefined for out of bound indices, and we are also supposed to write tests. In an actual interview you don't have to, but I recommend you write tests so that it helps you think better. So we need to write the test for returns correct item for the positive index, returns the correct item for the negative index, and returns undefined for out of bounds, right? And you can also do a TDD approach to this problem if you prefer. This is easier to do in this particular case. In fact, for anything that's unit level, like a utility function, right? It makes sense to do a test-driven development approach. Cool. Again, this question is free. Go try it out. And it's also a local based question, so you need to follow a couple of instructions to get started. I'll get that done and I'll see you soon. Now that I have the local setup done, right, I'm in the actual question folder. We could run our tests too. You could make them run with pm vtest index.tst, and these are the tests from the other questions. You don't have to worry about it. The moment you start working on this question, the rest of them will be ignored, right? It will only show the current file tests. So let's see what do we have in our index.js file. So I have some quick comments to indicate how a polyfill works. Normally a polyfill would be implemented as part of the prototype of a global object, something like this, right? In the case of array, it would be if array.prototype.at doesn't exist, we're going to implement the polyfill. That's how it works. Otherwise we don't do it, right? That means that browser has implemented it. So we're going to do something similar over here, and instead of overriding the at again, we're going to just name it something else. In this case, I'm going to name it my at. I've already named it, you don't have to worry. So it's my at, and the way I do attach it to prototype is through this method. Right, before all our tests are run, I just attach it to the prototype, and we're going to do a test-driven development approach because it shines in this particular case. Let us quickly write the test for these three things, right? So let's do a test for this method returns the correct item for a positive index, right? So it returns the element at the given positive index. So what are we testing for? We are testing for we expect, right? Let me just import it from vtest expect an array with 1, 2, 3. You can take any array. I'm just taking 1, 2, 3. My at 1 to be 1. Sorry, at 1 it's going to be index 2, right? So at first index it's 2, right? I understand it's a little confusing over here, but this is fine. And let's also do a similar test. I'm going to just copy this. And at index 2, I know that it's 3, right? So I'm just writing some tests. Test should fail. Obvious, we have not yet implemented it. And I'm going to just copy this test for the negative part too. For negative index, -1 would be 3. And at -2 would be 2. So -1 indicates the last index, which would be 3, and -2 would indicate the second to last index, which is 2. So this should be fine. And again, we have 2 failing tests. And let us also handle the case for returns undefined, right? So it returns undefined if index is out of bounds. And I expect 1, 2, 3. Let's do my at 5 dot to be, yeah, it should be undefined. So I can just use the proper matcher. That would be to be undefined. And I'm going to also do it for -5, just to make sure I'm handling those edge cases. And we have one test passing, which is this particular test, because we have not yet implemented our actual function. So empty function basically returns undefined. It's void. That's what it's returning over here. So now that we have our test done, let's work on the implementation. So right away, I want to see what happens if I just return the index, like just the index, like whatever the array is, I'm going to just return whatever the the index points to. And you could immediately see that we have two tests passing, which is the positive index. That is because, yes, for accessing anything positive, we know the regular array accessing through the square bracket syntax works. We don't have to do anything extra over here. And undefined, of course, again, that is already handled by the square bracket syntax, but it is failing for negative index. So we just need to handle the negative index. Now the logic over here is quite simple. It might feel like it's difficult, but in fact, I'm going to just quickly pull up the solution so that you understand what's happening. In fact, in an interview too, you should basically bring up a pen and paper and see how this works, right? This is what I want to discuss. So we have the same array 1, 2, 3, and the indices 0, 1, 2, and the same in the negative indices, right? -3, -2, -1. So it starts from -1. So if the index is less than 0, so what should we do? We should basically calculate our new index. And where does that come from, right? So basically new index is nothing but the length of the array plus the index. And why plus? Because the index in this case is going to be negative, right? So it basically subtracts the index from the length, like the negative index from the length, and you basically get the right index. So if the index is -2, right? If we want to get the -2 position, we just have to compute a new index and convert it to a positive index so we are able to access it. And it's very simple. We just can get the array length and add this negative index to it. So in this case, 3 minus 2 would basically be 1, and that is the same position as what we expect. And the logic is again the same, right? We just need to compute the new index. So, and that is only if the index is less than 0. So if the index is less than 0, if it's negative, if the index is negative, we need to just compute the new index, which is this dot length plus index. So I'm going to just make it explicit over here. New index is nothing but this dot length plus index. And you can use this new index over here. Or otherwise you could just do this inline, right? I'm just keeping it here so that it's explicit on what we're doing. And if we run the test, yeah, everything is passing. And in fact, this is how the actual implementation also looks like. Something around the same, yeah, something around the, yeah, if you look at this, this is how the spec looks. And if you look somewhere, we'll see the same stuff. If the index is greater than or equal to 0, it's just the same index. Otherwise, it's going to be length plus relative index. And in all the other cases, we return undefined, and that is already handled, right? So yeah, this is how the spec looks, by the way. And this is also pretty much the same implementation over here. So with that said, we can also mark this question as solved. All right, I hope you learned something new, and I'm going to see you in another question soon. Thank you.